Okay, let's get started then. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the second of our 3 sessions about the NIH biosketch transition to SciENcv. My name is Beth Dolph, and I'm a research proposal strategist in the Office of the Vice President for Health Sciences. And in our first session last week, we focused on establishing an ORCID account and profile. And the recording for that session is available on the UB Health Sciences YouTube channel. The recordings for today's session and the final session on April 3rd will also be posted on this channel. And if you hit subscribe, you can be notified when new videos are posted. So today we'll look at what NCBI and My Bibliography are, why we need them for the SciENcv transition, and how to connect various accounts to one another so that we're ready to jump into creating SciENcv biosketches in our last session on April 3rd. So what is NCBI? NCBI is the National Center for Biotechnology Information. It's part of the National Library of Medicine and houses various databases and tools that are useful for the scientific community, including My Bibliography and SciENcv. So our first step in accessing these resources is creating an NCBI account. To create your account, we'll go to the website you see at the top, ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, and we can then click the login button. And you have various options, but we're going to log in using ORCID. You'll be prompted to sign into your ORCID account, and you'll have to grant access. So you can see that NCBI is listed as the organization requesting access, and we'll click to authorize. Once we've granted access, we can now create an NCBI account. So you'll click the bubble to create a new NCBI account if you don't already have one, and you'll create a new username, and it will have @ORCID at the end. So for example, mine is bdolph@ORCID. And this isn't a username that's connected when you log into ORCID. It's a brand new name that you'll create on this screen. You'll enter your email and click continue. And then check your email and you should receive an account activation. You'll click the link at the bottom. And when you click, you'll be prompted to log in again. So we'll select ORCID and we'll log in again. And that will confirm our account. So now that we have an NCBI account set up, we can look into some of the resources housed within NCBI. And to do this, we'll go to our My NCBI dashboard. And this dashboard is like our home base when we're working within NCBI. From here, we can navigate to My Bibliography by clicking on Manage My Bibliography. And My Bibliography is a tool where you can save your citations. And in the context of NIH biosketches, there's 2 important things to note. The first is that you can use My Bibliography to select citations to insert into your biosketch. And second, you can include a link to your My Bibliography at the end of your biosketch. And it isn't required to include a link to a full list of your published work, but if you do want to include it, you'll use My Bibliography to do so. So you'll have to click to make your bibliography public in order to share your link on your biosketch. And the default when you set up My Bibliography is for it to be private, so just make sure you click to make it public. Then in order to populate My Bibliography, we'll go to Add Citations. And we'll have 3 options. And the easiest way to add citations is by selecting from PubMed. We'll search PubMed and I'll search by my name and a list of results will come up. I'll click the checkbox for the citations that I want to add, and then I'll click Add to My Bibliography. And now my citations will show up in My Bibliography. Now, I want to note something that will be helpful if you have a large number of citations to populate from your PubMed search results. So this is my search result list again, and notice there's not an option for select all. Since I only have 12 results, so I can easily click each box to add to the list. But if you have a lot of citations that you're populating at once, you don't want to be sitting there clicking all day. So I'm going to show you another way to do this. From the My Bibliography page or any other page within my NCBI, you can get back to your dashboard by clicking on your ID in the upper right corner. And when I do that, I'll select Dashboard. And now I'm back to my NCBI home base. So notice that there's a PubMed search at the top left, and I can do the same search that I did within My Bibliography itself. And you can see I get the same 12 results, but now I need to send these to My Bibliography. Since we aren't within My Bibliography, we're within PubMed. So I'll click on Send To, and I'll choose My Bibliography. And now this is the great part. You have options for how to select which citations to add. So I'll click the drop down, and I can choose to add all of the search results on a given page, or just the ones I've selected. And once you make your selection, you'll click Add, and your citations will be added to My Bibliography. And a really good feature to be aware of is that if you're adding from PubMed, so if you're adding a PubMed citation and it's already in your list as a PubMed citation, it won't show up twice. So you do need to make sure all the results that you're sending to My Bibliography are actually yours, but you shouldn't have to worry about duplicates if you're adding from PubMed. So if you select a full page and you happen to have a couple that are already added to your bibliography, it won't duplicate it. And as I mentioned, PubMed is the best way to add to My Bibliography, but if your citations aren't in PubMed, you can still add them. So we'll navigate back to My Bibliography, and you can get back to your dashboard by clicking on your username. And then navigate to My Bibliography from your dashboard, or you can just select Publications, and you'll go right to My Bibliography. So now we'll go to Add Citations. And you can choose to add from a file or manually. So if you have a citation that isn't in PubMed, but let's say you have it within your EndNote library, you can export the citation from EndNote as either an RIS or Medline formatted file. And then you can upload it by choosing From File. And when you select From a File, you'll be able to choose a file from your computer to upload. And after you've selected your file and clicked Open, you'll get this little box, and it will tell you how many new citations have been added to your bibliography from your selected files. So if something goes wrong with your upload and a new citation isn't added, it would say created 0, but here it says created 1. So my citation was successfully added. Now, if your citation isn't in PubMed and you don't have it as a file, the last option is to add manually. And when you do manual entry, you'll click the box at the top to choose which type of citation you're adding, and a list of options will pop up. So you'll fill in the necessary fields for that type of citation and click Add Citation, and it will be added to your bibliography. I mentioned that when you're adding from PubMed, if you've added the same citation more than once, it won't show up multiple times in your bibliography. If you've added a citation manually and through PubMed, you'll see an alert that you have citations that require attention, and you'll click to resolve these issues. So if I added something manually and then I later try to add it from PubMed, I would get this, this notification. And it shows my manually entered citation and then the PubMed citation that it thinks are the same publication, and they are the same. So I'll choose the PubMed citation. I'll click Resolve, and then the redundancy will be eliminated. And again, it's best to add with PubMed whenever possible. It really reduces the number of errors that come with manual entry, but you can use the file upload and manual methods when necessary. And of course, while these features are helpful, it's always best to double check your bibliography for errors before you publish it. So just like in ORCID, we can add delegates. We're doing deleting citations. So if you do need to delete a citation, you go to Manage Citations. And then you can click Delete Citation. So now we can talk about delegates. So just like in ORCID, you can assign delegates to manage My Bibliography. And to do this, we'll click on our ID in the top right. But this time we're going to go to Account Settings. And under Settings, you can scroll down until you see Delegates, and you'll add a delegate. You'll enter the delegate's email address, and they'll receive an email to activate their access. And they do need to have an NCBI account, so they'll be prompted to set one up if they don't already have one. And then to manage your delegates, you'll go back under your account settings to the Delegates section. And there you can see if a delegate is still awaiting confirmation, like Delegate 2 is here. And then once they've confirmed, you can decide to give them access to My Bibliography, My SciENcv, or to both by checking the box. And you can remove a delegate by checking the red X. And then on my dashboard, you can see under My Bibliography, there's a Delegated Bibliographies section. So if I want to manage my own bibliography, I'll click on Manage My Bibliography. But then if I want to manage as a delegate, I click on the account that I'm a delegate for. And if I'm on my bibliography page, to the right, you can see that it tells me how many bibliographies I own or am the delegate on. So I currently have 2 bibliographies that I can manage. And then when I click on that, I can select either my own bibliography or the name of someone else who has made me a delegate for their account. And that'll switch me over to be working within that person's bibliography. And as a delegate, I can add and delete citations from the bibliography. And then the last thing we're going to look at today is linking accounts. So we'll link NCBI with both ORCID and ERA Commons, and then we'll link ORCID and ERA Commons to each other. So now to link accounts with NCBI, we'll go back and click the upper right username. And we'll go back to our account settings. And we'll scroll down to linked accounts and we'll click Add Account. Now I'm going to search for ORCID and click it when it comes up. And I'll be prompted to log in to ORCID again. But now ORCID will show up in my linked accounts. So since we originally logged in to NCBI with ORCID, it should already show as linked. But if you logged in with a different account, this would be the method you would use to add ORCID to your linked accounts. And we'll do the same thing with ERA Commons. So I'll search and then I'll click on ERA Commons in my results. And we'll be prompted to log into ERA Commons. And when you're logging in here, you can either use your ERA Commons username and password, or there's other methods like using login.gov. And once you log into ERA Commons, it'll show up in your linked accounts. So now you can use either ERA Commons or ORCID to log into your NCBI. And then our last step for today, we're going to link ERA Commons and ORCID. And this is really simple. You'll start by logging into your ERA Commons account, and then you'll click on Personal Profile. And then over on the left, you'll see ORCID ID. And if you haven't linked your ERA Commons with your ORCID yet, you'll see in blue, it says Create or Connect your ORCID ID. And when we click, you'll see that NIH ERA Commons is requesting access to your ORCID, and you can authorize access. And now your ORCID ID will be listed, and that indicates that your ERA Commons and ORCID are connected, which is one of the requirements for using SciENcv for your NIH biosketch. So that's all we're going to cover for today. So to wrap up, we'll look at the what, why, and how that we covered. And I did it pretty quickly. So if you have questions, we can talk about those. So our what, My Bibliography is a tool within NCBI that lets you save your citations. And NCBI is also where SciENcv lives. So that brings us to our why, which is why set up NCBI and My Bibliography accounts. And in order to use SciENcv, you need to work within NCBI, and SciENcv can pull citations from My Bibliography to populate your biosketch. And also, if you want to include a link to your full list of publications, you'll use a link to My Bibliography. And then finally, how do we put this to work for us? We keep My Bibliography up to date, and also be sure to link your accounts, NCBI, ORCID, and ERA Commons. And those links are really critical for in 2 weeks when we're looking at creating your biosketch in SciENcv as efficiently as possible. So like I just mentioned, we have one more session to go in this series, and the first two have been laying the groundwork so that during the last session on April 3rd, we'll be ready to dive into SciENcv itself and see how it all works together to produce a biosketch.
Oh, the site for our YouTube. Oops, sorry about that, Beth.
Oh, that's okay. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And if anything comes up while you're setting up accounts, please feel free to email me.
So, yes, the slides will be accessible as well on the VPHS website, probably sometime next week. But otherwise, the video for the YouTube recording will probably be up by tomorrow. Any other questions? Please. Oh, thank you, Karen. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand if that's easier.
Beth, are these three components mutually dependent or independent? For instance, for let's say NIH grant, can you do SciENcv without the other two independently?
So within SciENcv, you have to have your Commons and your ORCID. Those are required, so you have to link those. To use when you're in SciENcv doing your biosketch, when you want to add citations, if you have My Bibliography, if you're in NCBI with your account, you have the option of selecting citations from My Bibliography or from ORCID, or you could do both. And having your two connected, your Commons and your ORCID, that is required. So all of those connections are necessary for SciENcv to work for you for the NIH.
Question for Dr. Tomaszewski.
Yeah, I think I'm asking the same question. I just did this SciENcv for an NSF application about 2 weeks ago, and I didn't see anything there for ERA Commons. Now I'm understanding that I have to go in and set up an ORCID account, number one, and number two, an ERA Commons account, and then I have to link all three of those together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're on the when you're doing your NIH biosketch within SciENcv, it makes you have your ORCID as your persistent identifier, and then it has your Commons, your ERA Commons name will be pulled too, so that it can then generate your biosketch with that information.
So when I went into SciENcv, I went in through the institution. There was a way I was fumbling around, and I got in through SUNY and UB, and I set it up there. Do I have to use those account settings, or I go in and I do this again for ORCID and I do it again for ERA Commons?
Yeah, so you'll add those two within NCBI as your linked accounts, the ORCID and the Commons.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Schwartz has a question as well. Dr. Schwartz, do you want to pose it, or do you want me to?
Well, I've just raised the question. There seems like redundancy. The UB profile bibliography uses PubMed, and are we going to be setting up two separate bibliographies through UB? Is there any way to interconnect UB profile and the NCBI? I noticed, I just opened up I had an NCBI bibliography, and I noticed that there were differences between what I had recently just filled out for my UB profile bibliography using PubMed.
I'm not sure at this point if those two can integrate. I do know that they're working on integrations to eliminate those redundancies, but at this point, I do believe you need to set up the different accounts.
And I do have a meeting, not tomorrow, but the following Friday, on a similar topic with the people within just the Jacob School that do that, and they are looking at trying to find the connectivity.
I think it'll be helpful. There are just so many things that we do that are redundant and are time consuming.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Other questions? Dr. Dolph, you're spot on with time again. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to email me.